Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Nashtaprayeshvapatreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatir Uttamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajata Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye. Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So welcome all the devotees for this Srimad Bhagavatam class. So yesterday we completed first two chapters of the 9th canto. Today we'll begin the third chapter, the marriage of Shukanya and Chavana Muni. If there are some of the questions, if they have not been able to address yesterday, then we can ask during the break, during the question and answer session today. Shri Shuka Uvacha Shariyatir Manavo Raja Brahmishtas Sambhavuvaha Yova Angirasam Satre Dvitiyam Aharuchivan. Somebody can read translation.
Sri Sukadeva Goswami continued, O King Saryati, another son of Manu, was a ruler completely aware of Vedic knowledge. He gave instruction about the function of the for the second day of the yajna to be performed by the descendants of Angira.
So we are discussing the dynasty of the Vaivasvata Manu, the kings in the dynasty of Vaivasvata Manu. We discussed in the first chapter how Vaivasvata Manu got a daughter called as Ila, and that Ila was transformed into a male called as Sudyumna. And Sudyumna, when he went to the forest of Lord Shiva, he got transformed into a female form. And later, by the grace of Vashishta, he was male for 1 month, female for 1 month. We discussed that story. Then after Sudyumna went to the forest, Vaivasvata Manu performed severe austerities for 100 years. And he got 10 sons. And the dynasty through the 10 sons are being described by Shukadeva Goswami, the second chapter. And so yesterday we discussed the story of Prishadra, Vasishta cursing Prishadra. We discussed some principles in regarding punishment, compassion, and also what was the reason for Vashishta giving over punishment to Prishadra, because Vashishta's intelligence was contaminated because he was doing the occupation of a priest where he was taking money from different people, and then that contaminated his intelligence, that resulted in giving a wrong judgment and over punishing his disciple Prishadra. We discussed that story. So today we'll discuss the further dynasty of Vaivasvata Manu. So Sharyati is another son of Manu. He was a ruler completely aware of the Vedic knowledge. He gave instructions about the functions to be performed for the second day of the sacrifice by the descendants of Angira. So Brahmishta means he was learned in the Vedas. So Sharyati had a beautiful daughter called as Sukanya. So once along with Sukanya, Sharyati went to the forest in order to see the hermitage of Chavana Rishi. Somewhere I remember hearing this. Chavan Prakash also, this name comes from this Chavana Rishi. I remember hearing. So when Shukanya, surrounded by her friends, she was collecting certain fruits and flowers in the forest. So there she saw a tree, and in the tree there was an ant hill. And in the ant hill, she saw two glowing objects. And as a matter of say curiosity or a childish play, like without any like premeditated some attitude, just as a matter of play, she ignorantly pierced those two glowworms with a thorn. And then the blood began to ooze out from those two glowworms. And immediately the entire entourage of King Sharyati, they experienced constipation. They could not pass stool and they could not pass urine also. So Sharyati Maharaj was like surprised actually. Like, why suddenly this has happened? So Sharyati, because he felt that maybe we committed some offense to Chavana Rishi. Somebody amongst us must have done something in order to pollute his hermitage. So at that time, Shukanya, she immediately admitted, she came and revealed that she said that actually I tried to I saw some two glowing objects and I pierced those glowing objects with a thorn. Out of ignorance, I did that. Maybe that is a mistake I committed. I saw blood coming out of that those glowing objects. So King Shariati became afraid. So he thought that maybe we have committed an offense to Chavana Rishi, who was staying within that ant hill, the whole of that ant hill. So 9th verse. Tadaviprayamagnyaya pradad duhitaram mune krichran muktastamamantya puram prayat samahitah.
King Saryati, being very contemplative and thus understanding Chavanmuni's purpose, gave his daughter in charity to the sage, thus released from danger with great difficulty. He took permission from Chavanmuni and returned home.
So Shariati Maharaj actually begged forgiveness from Chavana Rishi. Please forgive my foolish daughter. Then Chavana Rishi asked, is your daughter married or not? So Shariati could understand by that question the desire of Chavana Rishi. So he gave his daughter in marriage to the Chavana Rishi. And actually Chavana Rishi was a very old person. So Shariati gave his young daughter in marriage to Chavana Rishi. And how Shukanya, the young daughter of Shariati, actually pleased Chavana Rishi, that is described in the next verse. Sukanya Chavanam Prapya Patim Paramakopanam Prinayamasa Chittagnya Apramattanu Vrittibihi.
Chavanmuni was very irritable, but since Sukanya had gotten him as her husband, she dealt with him carefully, according to his mood. Knowing his mind, she performed service to him without being bewildered.
So she says that Chavana is mentioned that Chavana Rishi was not only old, he had a very irritable attitude. Sometimes, so then Shukanya actually, like, she got this old person who was irritable person as a husband. But Prinayam Asa Chittagnya, understanding the temperament of Chavana Rishi, she actually served him and she satisfied him. And then with great attention she satisfied Chavana Rishi. So in this purport, Prabhupada talks about a certain principles about the culture and the temperament of a wife. He says, so this is an indication of the relationship between husband and wife. A great personality like Chavana Rishi has the temperament of always wanting to be in a superior position. That's a natural, say, male psychology. Such a person cannot submit to anybody. Therefore, he had an irritable temperament. So Sukanya could understand this attitude, and under the circumstances, she treated him accordingly. But if any wife wants to be happy with her husband, she must try to understand her husband's temperament and please him. And this is victory for a woman. And even in if you see Krishna's dealings with her wives, so the wives actually tried to please Krishna in various ways, and Krishna became conquered by the devotion of the wives, and Krishna actually would satisfy all the desires of his wives. So however great a woman may be, she must place herself before her husband in this way. That is to say, she must be ready to carry out her husband's orders and please him in all circumstances. Then her life will be successful when the wife becomes as irritable as the husband. their life at home is sure to be disturbed or ultimately completely broken. In the modern day, the wife is never submissive and therefore the home life is broken even by slight incidents. Either the wife or the husband may take advantage of the divorce laws. According to the Vedic law, however, there is no such thing as divorce laws. Westerners contend that this is a slave mentality for the wife, but factually it is not. It is a tactic by which the women can conquer the heart of her husband, however irritable or cruel he may be. In this case, we clearly see that although Chavana Muni was not young, but indeed old enough to be Sukanya's grandfather and was also irritable, Shukanya, the beautiful young daughter of a king, submitted herself to her old husband and tried to please him in all respects. So, in the Bhagavatam, we find, although Bhagavatam is actually a Amalam Purana, Bhagavatam focuses on actually glorification of the Supreme Lord and performing pure bhakti to the Lord. But whenever there is an opportunity, Prabhupada writes different purports in relation to the storyline of the Bhagavatam about different principles of Vedic culture. You may not find like such elaborate purport about the temperament of say wife or for that matter any other principles of varnashram in the Acharya's purports, because Acharyas they just choose to highlight the transcendence aspect, but Prabhupada, whenever there's an opportunity, according to the storyline, he highlights certain principles. So some of these actually purports sometimes it may be difficult to highlight in the modern scenario where people are brought up in a certain culture or they may not have exposure to certain principles of Vedic culture. They may, because people are brought up in different environments. So generally, sometimes it is easy to convince people about the transcendence aspect. Chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or a material world, it's a place of dualities. Sometimes it is easy to convince the transcendence aspect, but it may be more difficult to convince about the certain aspects of the culture, whichever ashram, whichever, in general I'm speaking, whether it is here the purport is about the qualities of a wife, but any aspect of the Vedic culture, because the reason is that we are all actually brought up in a particular say culture, particular environment. Like suppose somebody is born in an island, he is born blind, and all the people who are living in that island, they were also blind people. So every person he has been dealing with right from the childhood, every person who he is speaking, his parents, his relatives, his friends, and he himself, everybody is blind. And one fine day, after many years or many decades of growing up in that island, one fine day, suddenly somebody from some other island comes to that island, and that person is he's not blind. And he starts describing about the beauty of the nature. He starts describing about the beauty of the mountains and the trees and the waterfalls and beauty of the different animals, so many different things. So at that time, when the person who is hearing this description, he may look very strange. It may look very strange for him. Like, what is this person saying? And it may be it will be difficult for him to accept, because he has not experienced, he is born blind, and right from the childhood he has also met only blind people, and nobody experienced about the beauty of the nature. And because of being sometimes conditioned in that environment for many decades, and suddenly when somebody comes and describes about the beauty of the nature, and how one can see different things in different places, he talks about his travel to different places in the world. So then sometimes the people from this blind island, they may think that this person is crazy, or this person is uh, there is something wrong with the person. So sometimes the similar thing can be, we can think in Kali Yuga, many times when we are born in a particular surrounding, like for example, at least in India, still to some extent culture is present. Although India is becoming westernized more and more, but at least we have seen maybe in our parents or grandparents or certain culture, and which is also rapidly deteriorating in India. But more in the Western countries, they may not have experience of the culture, or when somebody is brought up in a particular environment, and then where one doesn't see certain principles of the culture, and then for 15 years, 20 years, he's brought up in a particular environment, and suddenly when he comes to certain, say, satsang, where certain principles of the, say, Vedic culture are spoken, and it may be that may be little big thing for them to digest. They may feel a revolt, actually. They may feel like revolting, or they may feel that oh, these people what are they speaking about? This is like, for them it will appear like the speech of that person with the eyes describing the beauty of the different places. And the people of the blind island may think that this person has gone crazy, or there's something wrong with this person. So many times some of these principles about the certain Vedic cultural aspect, because we are brought up in a certain environment in which we may not be exposed to that culture, it may appear a little strange. So at that time, if we are not open-minded, generally we tend to make judgments based on our own experience. But when a person is open-minded, is open to the possibility when somebody hears something contrary to one's belief system, contrary to one's experience in his life so far. When he hears something contrary, at that time, if we try to be open-minded, if we try to inquire more, so is there a possibility? Is there a truth in his version of in his description? Is there any logic to that? When you are open-minded and make inquiries instead of immediately rejecting it, then we can actually appreciate the certain truths even presented in that. So when we talk about, say, some of these aspects of this culture, one thing is that when people selectively describe about certain aspects of the culture, suppose when somebody describes only about the duties and temperaments of the wife, but when they don't talk about the duties and temperaments of a husband, or sometimes, say, as preachers, sometimes it's easy to describe about certain duties and temperaments, or whatever psychology of, say, grahasthas or vanaprasthas. But sometimes we don't realize that we may not introspect, or we may not realize that do we also follow the say culture of a say culture and temperaments of a brahmachari ashram. Uh, because when we analyze every aspect, whether it is brahmachari, grahastha, vanaprastha, sannyasi or a women, so every aspect of the Vedic culture, when we read the Shastra presents like real ideal principles, and then sometimes when we only selectively speak about certain principles of a certain members of the society, and when we don't when we don't introspect whether we are following the principles according to our situation, and when we don't highlight the principles of say other members of the society, then then people can feel that oh, this person is little making a one-sided presentation. He's speaking about only about the duties of a husband, or only about duties of a wife, or only about this thing. So these things, so therefore, we have to present all the principles. And of course, when Prabhupada is writing the purport, when he is writing some principles, he is writing at that particular verse, whatever according to the storyline it is coming, he is highlighting that. So in the course of that, he is talking about the temperament of a wife and the psychology of a man, that he tends to be in a superior position. And Shukanya, understanding the temperament of Chavana Rishi, she served him, and then Chavana Rishi was pleased. And so sometimes, like, there are people who are coming from a certain as I mentioned, that sometimes there are people who may take to devotional service, but it may be more difficult to convince about certain principles of culture, because they are brought up in a more westernized environment. And then sometimes we may meet people who may be brought up in a very cultured environment. They may be very dutiful. They may be performing the different aspects of say Vedic culture much better than us. But it may be more difficult to convince them about the transcendence aspect. They are just satisfied in performing, say, the rituals, and they are satisfied in performing their duties. It may be more difficult to convince them about the sometimes transcendence aspect, because they are so satisfied in their mode of goodness. They may not want to, they may feel that whatever they are doing is correct. And so like the different challenges, sometimes it is difficult to convince about the transcendence aspect to some people. And for other people, we may convince the transcendence aspect, but it is difficult to convince about the certain cultural aspect. So when we talk about this current purport about the psychology of say women, the Shukanya's attitude towards a Chavana Rishi. So Bhagavatam elsewhere also describes that the fourth canto, women is an auspicious source of energy, of inspiration for men. So when we say somebody is a source of inspiration, the person who is in the source of inspiration, that he or she puts himself in a subordinate position and inspire that other person to accomplish more. So the person who is acting as a source of inspiration, the natural position of that person is to little be in the background, to take a subordinate position. Just like suppose in the person who is acting as a source of inspiration, he or she is only driving the other person to act. But in order to do that, one has to be in a subordinate position. Just like in a car, which is making the car to move at a particular speed, the engine is the one which is making the car move. But that engine is not visible. When you see the car, you don't see the engine. Engine is there within the car. Engine is not like externally visible in the car. Engine naturally takes a little backside, little background role. So, so here about talking about the feminine energy. So it requires that a woman puts herself below the man, that she submits not only externally but deep within the heart. So by that, when she acts like that, by the feminine energy, she empowers the man to take charge, to be responsible, to provide and protect. So the feminine energy is so powerful that she can bring out the best out of a man. Many times we often hear somebody is irresponsible, somebody is not doing anything in life. Many times we will say that get him married actually, then he will come in the right track. And most of the time it becomes true that the person who was apparently useless and not doing anything, after he gets married, then the entrance of the feminine energy, and she will bring the person in the right track. She brings out the best out of the man. So therefore Prabhupada says that a feminine energy is the power of inspiration to a man. So if the women learns the secrets of being the auspicious source of energy to a man, then she will automatically receive everything from him. Whatever she needs for her emotional health and happiness. And that is the tactic by which she conquers his heart. And so that's what Prabhupada highlights in the purport. So suppose, so in the say in the non-Vedic culture or in the Western culture, the equality of the say male and female is highly stressed. So 2 days back also we discussed that this equality of the say male, female, or say Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, any, this equality we can talk only on a spiritual platform. Same spirit soul is present, but on a material platform, the bodies are different. The different psychologies of the bodies, the temperaments, the combinations, the three gunas are different. A simple this thing, like suppose the same person, one day he is driving the Mercedes-Benz car. Another day he is driving the Ford Escort car. So the person who is driving may be the same person who is driving both the cars. One day he is driving Mercedes-Benz, another day he is driving Ford Escort. But the vehicles are different. You cannot say Mercedes-Benz is equal to Ford Escort. And both Mercedes-Benz and Ford Escort have their own, say, plus point, say, weaknesses and the strength. So when the person is driving that Mercedes-Benz, he has to drive according to the limitations of that vehicle. And when he is driving the Ford Escort, Mercedes-Benz may have a say greater, say, he can go at a greater speed, say for example. And Ford Escort, if he tries to go at that speed, then he will meet with an accident when he is driving Ford Escort. So therefore, although the same spirit soul is there, but one has to be aware of in which body one is in and understand the say limitations of that particular vehicle and act accordingly. So otherwise, although both the vehicles may be reaching the same destination, but still while going for the destination, while taking the right path, But if we don't drive the vehicle according to the particular limitations of the vehicle, then on the way to the destination, we can meet with an accident. So here in this purport, Prabhupada is talking about say how to drive when you are driving the female vehicle or a Ford Escort. So what are the temperaments? How one should drive this vehicle in order to have a safe journey. We can see in that light. So suppose, say in the it's a non-Vedic culture or Western culture, they talk about equality or they talk about how a women should compete with the men. So like the result of this is that when a woman tries to compete with the men, this has a disempowering effect on the male nature, because a male needs the feminine energy in order to be inspired to be responsible and take charge. So when a woman tries to compete, so the male becomes weak, he becomes insecure, and will become indecisive and sometimes even lazy or depressed and irresponsible. And he will also not feel inclined to fulfill the emotional needs of the women, because he will feel that, oh, if I support her, she will become even more stronger in her competitive nature, and that will weaken me even more. So one may feel, oh, it is if she is competing with me, if I try to support her even more, then she will become even more stronger. So for the male, it will become, it is almost like feeding a scorpion or a snake who will bite even more stronger. So, so therefore, we may perform different roles like different people. The current times, suppose females also have to be working, and many the current time may perform multiple roles. Somebody is working in a say company, big position, etc. We cannot avoid in the current time different education. Many times we cannot enforce certain things, but at least the feminine energy and like masculine energy, when one should not try to unnecessarily in order to like achieve something, one should not lose one's natural temperament of a feminine energy or a masculine energy. So when we try to artificially be somebody, but when you artificially try to be somebody else for the sake of say achieving something, then that is one of the reason for say midlife crisis or different other say problems which happen later. So here in this purport, so Prabhupada talks about Shukanya's temperament towards Chavana Rishi. So then how Chavana Rishi was old, and how Chavana Rishi reciprocated with Shukanya, that we will see in the next verses. So we can see one point is that somebody is in a position where he is accepting service from certain subordinate. Here Chavana Rishi is accepting service from the Shukanya, who was very young and he was very bold and irritable. But we will see that how Chavana Rishi reciprocated with the Shukanya. So that is the important responsibility on the part of the person who is accepting that service. So therefore, it is not that the scriptures they only talk about so the female should be subordinate or a disciple should be subordinate to the guru, or say this person should subordinate to the authorities. But the scriptures also highlight how the person who is receiving that subordination of the dependents, who is receiving that service, how he should also perform his responsibility towards the dependents. One of the quality of the Lord is called as Sharanagata Palaka. How he protects the those who have surrendered. One of the main reason why Lord Ram was angry with Wali is that even when Sugriva surrendered to Wali, Wali tried to kill Sugriva. That is the main reason why Lord Ram was angry with Wali. To give for the person who is surrendered, who was, but you still try to attack that person, kill that person, that is a very great sin. In fact, that is also highlighted in Parishit Maharaj punishing Kali and also showing mercy to Kali. When Kali surrendered to Parishit Maharaj thought that if I kill Kali now, because he surrendered, if I kill him now, then that will result in the increase of adharma, because I'll be breaking the dharmic principle of giving shelter to the surrendered person. At the same time, if I just, because he surrendered, if I just leave him scot-free, if I don't do anything to him for the previous sins he committed, then Kali may spread his influence in the kingdom. So Parishit Maharaj took a very mature decision of showing punishment and also compassion to Kali. So here, how Chavana Rishi reciprocated, that will also be told. And another point which I wanted to mention, like for example, so in this purport, Prabhupada talks about the say psychology of a woman, the wife. Like another different places in the Bhagavatam purport, Prabhupada says that how the woman is always dependent under the care of a father or the husband or under the care of a son. So this verse which Prabhupada quotes often, that comes in Manu Samhita, and that also that comes in a very interesting section in the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata, when Dushyanta goes to Kanva Rishi's ashram, and Dushyanta sees Shukanya, and he becomes attracted to Shukanya. Kanva Rishi was not present in the ashram. And Dushyanta asked Shukanya, not Shukanya, Shakuntala. Dushyanta asked Shakuntala to give introduction about her, and Shakuntala tells her story. Initially, she tells that how she is the daughter of Kanva Rishi, and then later she tells that how she is the daughter of Vishwamitra and Menaka, and the Kanva Rishi. When she was lying down as a small baby in the forest, Kanva Rishi brought her to the ashram, and then Kanva Rishi only maintained her. So therefore, I consider Kanva Rishi to my father, like that Shakuntala mentions. And then Dushyanta says that I am attracted towards you. I knew right from the beginning that you cannot be the daughter of a Brahmana, because the fact that I am attracted towards you, that you have to be the daughter of a Kshatriya, and so I want to get married to you, like that he says. Then Shakuntala says that, like right now, my father Kanva Rishi is not in the ashram. And then she speaks that verse, how the woman is always under the protection of the husband or a wife or the father. So I cannot make the decision of marrying you. So then Dushyanta talks about 8 kinds of marriages according to the Shastra. And one of the marriages, Gandharva Vivaha. In Gandharva Vivaha, a male and a female, they decide to get married without consulting anybody, without consulting the superiors. And this marriage is allowed for the Kshatriyas. And he says that this is a bona fide marriage according to the dharmic principles. And ask yourself, ask the Paramatma in your heart. And we don't have to wait to consult your father Kanva Rishi. Ask the Paramatma in your heart, and whether you are attracted to me, whether you want to get married to me, And moreover, this is according to bona fide, according to the Shastra. These 8 kinds of marriages, Gandharva Vivaha is bona fide. So here, why I'm speaking this is that the Shakuntala is the one who speaks that verse, how the woman is always dependent, like that. But but in the case of Shakuntala, she experienced that protection from Kanva Rishi. When again coming to the original example, she was brought up in that culture. She experienced that protection. So naturally, she actually she spoke that how the women is always dependent or something in all stages of life. So it was not an imposed law, rather it is an inspired culture. So Shakuntala's that ideology was automatically formed due to the beautiful experience of the protection which she experienced. So therefore she said, I will wait for my father. Let my father take the decision. But in the current times, when somebody is brought up in an environment where the person did not experience that culture, then when that person hears certain statements from the Shastra, so that may be very big thing for that person to swallow. It will be very difficult for a person to accept. So therefore, when we present certain principles, it should not be in the form of a imposed law. Rather, we have to inspire the people to follow a culture. In the case of Shakuntala, like she was, that ideology was naturally formed because of the protection she experienced from conversion. And then, although she spoke that words, how the women is always dependent in the different stages, she took an independent decision to get married to Dushyanta without asking Kanva Rishi. She didn't wait for the Kanva Rishi to come, and she decided to get married to Dushyanta. She got married to Dushyanta, and Dushyanta united with Shakuntala, and then Dushyanta left. And then later Kanva Rishi arrives after a few hours, and Shakuntala, when she reveals this to Kanva Rishi, rather Kanva Rishi actually comes to know by his mystic power. At that time, what was the response of Kanva Rishi? Kanva Rishi says that what he have done is according to the principles of Dharma, and he gives complete blessings to Shakuntala. So Shakuntala only spoke about the principle of actually how the woman is always dependent, but she took an independent decision. It was not a whimsical decision. She took an independent decision based on her inspiration from the super soul, and after understanding that this is according to the Shastric principle, how it is according to Dharma. And Kanva Rishi as an authority, if we see from the point of view of authority, many times, sometimes the authorities, suppose a subordinate makes a decision without consulting an authority. In the case of Kanva Rishi is the person who brought up Shakuntala right from the childhood, when she was a few days old baby. From that time, he only actually brought up. And the most important decision in the life of a woman is actually marriage. And she took the decision without consulting that person who actually nourished her, who protected her, who brought up her. So normally the person like should get so disturbed that how can you make a decision without consulting me? Like one would become very angry. But Kanva Rishi understands that whatever she has done is according to the principles of Dharma, and therefore he approved. Although she may not have consulted me personally, but because she followed the principles of Dharma, and he gave his complete blessings. Sometimes, but when somebody is in a little egoistic platform, even though sometimes the subordinate might have done a right decision according to the, say, Shastric principle, when somebody is little egoistic, one may think, oh, how can you do this without consulting me? Huh. So, but Kanva Rishi also actually approved and he gave his full blessings. So, anyway, these principles, what I wanted to highlight is that so these principles of culture, when somebody has an experience of being brought up in a particular atmosphere, then it becomes easy for that person to accept those principles. Even without somebody telling that person, those principles of culture naturally get formed in that person's heart. That is what happened in Shakuntala. So, so Shakuntala's confidence was experience based. So when there is a lack of experience, it causes rejection. So then, kasyachittvata kalasya nasatyav ashramāgatau tau pujayitva provacha vayo me dattameshwarau. Can read translation.
Hare Krishna. Thereafter, some time having passed, the Ashwini Kumar brothers, the heavenly physicians, happened to come to Chavan Muni's ashram. After offering them respectful obeisances, Chavan Muni requested them to give him youthful life, for they were able to do so.
So, Ashwini Kumaras, they came to Chavana Muni's ashram, and Chavana Rishi requested them that because he wanted to show, he wanted to reciprocate with Shukanya's faithful service. Therefore, he asked the Ashwini Kumaras to give a youthful life. So, therefore, as I mentioned, we see even in the Kardama Muni's life also, the way Devahuti served Kardama Muni, it is similar to the way actually Shukanya served Chavana Rishi. Devahuti was a princess, and Kardama Muni was performing severe austerities, and Devahuti was living in a very simple atmosphere, and she was serving Kardama Muni. And then Kardama Muni also reciprocated with Devahuti, and by his mystic siddhis, he created a spaceship and he took her to so many places in the universe, which even the demigods did not have access. He took her to so many holiday spots, and he gave her a beautiful body, and he also assumed a beautiful body, and he gave her children. So therefore, the scriptures are never one-sided. They actually highlight the roles of the different members of the society. When only one role is highlighted, then it can make a very selective presentation. When the scriptures talk about the qualities of a disciple, they also highlight the qualities of a guru or the duties of a guru. So here Chavana Rishi wanted to reciprocate with Shrikanya, therefore he asked the Ashwini Kumaras. Ashwini Kumaras were expert in Ayurveda, as was Dhanvantari. And in every department of material science, there is a perfection to be achieved. And to achieve it, one must consult the Vedic literature. So sometimes by certain, say, mantra, certain powers, one can convert the old body into a youthful body. In the modern times, the scientists, they try to regain youth, or they try to stop the old age by defying the nature by artificial means through plastic surgery or anti-aging. Some years back, there was some Bollywood actress, there was a news which mentioned that because that actress was taking many anti-aging medicines, as a side effect, she got a heart attack and died, like that there was mentioned. So people try to defy the nature and they try to stop old age or they try to stop death. But in the Vedic culture also there were certain methods to make a old person into a young man and sometimes to revive a dead man. But those methods were learned by worshipping a superior devata and by pleasing the superior devata and getting a particular mantra, and then by that they obtained those methods. By submitting oneself to the superior authority, they got a particular mantra. Sukracharya got the Mrityu Sanjeevani mantra to revive the demons. So Ashwini Kumaras also had a certain power to actually give youthful body to an old man. And Prabhupada concludes that the highest perfection is to become a devotee of the Lord. To attain this perfection, one must consult the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Chavana Maharishi said that although you are, he said that, okay, you give me a youthful body, I will do something in return. I understand that you are not eligible to drink the Soma Rasa in sacrifices, but by my ability, I will give you a full pot of Soma Rasa. And you please kindly arrange beauty and youth for me, which is attractive to young women. Because Stree by nature, Stree means one who expands. So yes, therefore a man is also supposed to satisfy the needs of the women. So naturally there is a natural propensity to have, say, good house, good food, children, good clothes, and go for social functions. So when a man is accepting a service from the women, then he is also supposed to actually satisfy these needs, because that is how the system is like that. That's what we see. Kardama Muni, he satisfied the needs of Devahuti both materially. There's an elaborate description in the third canto, and then ultimately he satisfied the spiritual needs of Devahuti by leaving behind a representative in the form of Kapila Dev, who will deliver Devahuti. So here Chavana Rishi is saying that I will actually allow that, I will make sure that you get to drink a Soma Rasa. So Ashwini Kumaras accepted the proposal, and they told Chavana Rishi, just submerge yourself in this lake which can fulfill all desires. So all three of them, the two Ashwini Kumaras and Chavana Rishi, they submerged in a particular lake. And Chavana Rishi, because he was very old, was emaciated because of the old age. He was having a very loose skin and white hair, and all three of them entered the lake. And then when they came out, three handsome men, all of equal beauty, wearing lotus garlands and earrings and fine clothes, they emerged from the lake. So all three of them looked exactly alike. So at that time, Shukanya saw all three of them. So she could not distinguish her husband from the two Ashwini Kumaras, because all of them are equally beautiful. So then, not understanding who her husband is, so she took shelter of the Ashwini Kumaras. That kindly tell me, she started praying to the Ashwini Kumaras in her mind that kindly tell me who is my husband. And then Ashwini Kumaras, being pleased with the devotion of Shukanya, being pleased with her chastity and faithfulness, and they revealed who is Chavana Rishi. And then by taking permission from Chavana Rishi, they returned to the heavenly planets in their plane. So then, and then after that, once the king Sharyati, he was desiring to perform a sacrifice, he went to the residence of Chavana Rishi. And to his surprise, he saw a young man on the side of his daughter Shukanya. So Sharyati became very angry. So when Shukanya actually offered obeisances to her father, instead of offering blessings to Shukanya, he was very displeased and he spoke. 20th verse. Chikírshitam te kimidam patistvaya pralambito loka namaskruto munihi yatvam jaragrastam asatya sammatam vihaya jaram bhajase mumadvagam.
O unjust girl, what is this that you have desired to do? You have cheated the most respectable husband, who is honored by everyone. For I see that because he was old, diseased, and therefore unattractive, you have left his company to accept as your husband this young man, who appears to be a beggar from the street.
So here it was a completely incompatible pair because Chavana Rishi was a very old man, Shukanya was young. But Sharyati expected her to be faithful to her husband, but when he suddenly saw that his daughter had accepted somebody else, even though the man was young and handsome, so he immediately chastised her as asati or unchaste, because he felt that she had accepted some other man in the presence of her husband. So, so then, so at that time, Sukanya, he further said that, like, oh, my daughter, who are born in a respectable family, how have you degraded your consciousness in this way? How is it that you are shamelessly maintaining a paramour? You will thus degrade the dynasties of both your father and your husband to hellish life. So Prabhupada explains that it is quite clear that according to the Vedic culture, a woman who accepts a paramour uh, is certainly responsible for the degradation of her father's family and the family of her husband. So for a woman of the Brahmana, Kshatriya or Vaishya class to accept another husband in the presence of the husband she has married is unacceptable in the Vedic culture. So King Sharyati, who did not know the real facts of Chavanamuni's transformation, was surprised to see the behavior of this daughter. So at that time, Shukanya, being proud of her chastity, she smiled and she smilingly spoke to her father that this young man is actually your son-in-law and he is born in the family of, he is the same great sage Chavana Rishi who was born in the family of Bhrigu Rishi. And then Shukanya explained to her that how she actually received, how her husband received the body of a young man. And when the king heard this, he was very surprised. And then he embraced his beloved daughter. And Chavana Rishi, by his own prowess, enabled Sharyati to perform the Soma Yajna. And the Muni offered a full pot of Soma Rasa to the Ashwini Kumaras, although they were unfit to drink that. So when Chavana Rishi offered this part of Soma Rasa to the Ashwini Kumaras, Indra became angry and he took up his thunderbolt to kill Chavana Rishi. But Chavana Rishi paralyzed Indra's arm that held the thunderbolt. So although the Ashwini Kumaras were only physicians and were previously excluded from drinking the Soma Rasa in sacrifices, the Devatas allowed them henceforward to drink the Soma Rasa. So sometimes there are, even in the heavenly planets, there is sometimes there is some competition and they try to suppress somebody else not getting certain facility. So Ashwini Kumaras was stopped. Now they allowed Ashwini Kumaras to drink it. And then further it's explained that chapter. For the rest of the chapter is about the dynasty of Sharyati. So Sharyati begot 3 sons named Uttanabarhi, Anartha, and Bhurisena. From Anartha came a son called as Revata. And Revata constructed a kingdom known as Kushasthali in the depths of the ocean. So there he lived and ruled the tracts of land as Anartha, and he had 100 sons, of whom the eldest was Kakudmi. So so taking his own daughter Revati, Kakudmi went to see Brahma in Brahmaloka. So Revata's son is Kakudmi. Revata had 100 sons, and Kakudmi is the eldest son. Kakudmi's daughter is Revati, and Kakudmi took Revati along with him to meet Brahmaji in Brahmaloka. And he wanted to consult Brahmaji about the suitable husband for his daughter Revati. So Bhagavatam does not describe more details. Sometimes like one may wonder, like, why should we go all the way from depths of the ocean to Brahmaloka? Like, why he made such an attempt? Is there not anybody else to consult? Why make such an attempt to go and consult Brahmaloka to find out the suitable son? Musical performance. So Kakudmi was waiting for a moment. And then when the musical performance finished, Kakudmi offered respects to Brahma and expressed his desire that I want to get a suitable son-in-law for my daughter. So Brahmaji, like, he laughed at Kakudmi and said that, like, you had different choices in your mind as the suitable husbands for your daughter. But all those people whom you have decided within the core of your heart, all of them have passed away in the course of time, because by the time you came to Brahmaloka and now you will reach back to earthly planet, 27 Chatur Yugas have already passed. So we do not hear of the sons, grandsons, and even other descendants of the people whom you considered as a suitable sons-in-law. The many generations of the dynasties have passed away. So then he said, now when you go back to earthly planet, Lord Balaram is actually, Krishna and Balaram are performing their pastimes in the earthly planets. That Balaram will be the suitable son-in-law for your daughter. So 34th verse. Bhuvo Bharavatārāya Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavanaha Avatirno Nijamshena Punya Shravana Kirtanaha.
Lord Baladev is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who hears and chants about him is purified, because he is always the well-wisher of all living entities. He has descended with all his paraphernalia to purify the entire world and lessen its burden.
So Kakudmi, when he received this order, he offered obeisances, and he came back to his residence, which was abandoned by his brothers and relatives, who are all living in the directions because of the fear of the Yakshas. And the Kakudmi gave his most beautiful daughter to Baladev and then retired to perform austerity in Badrikashram. So almost at the end of the story of every king, finally we see that how they finally retired to perform austerities to attain liberation, which is the theme of the 9th canto. So if there are any questions or something.
So, Prabhuji, one quick question.
Acha,
so okay. So our admin is requesting if we can have a break and then question.
Acha.
I thought we'll question, but okay.
Prabhuji, can we have break? Then after that, questions can.
Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji, 10 minutes break. It's okay.
Okay. Yeah, fine. Okay.
Hare Krishna. After 10 minutes, we'll resume.
Prabhuji, shall we have a question or you want to start this? Prabhuji,
Yes, Ravi. Yes.
one quick question. There was a discussion about the soma juice or somaras that is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita also. So somebody once had asked me about this, and that person's interpretation was that this is an alcoholic beverage. So just wanted to ask, what is it exactly? And second thing, why this poor Indra gets worried about every single thing? Why is to worry about somebody else getting somaras and juice something? He got upset that Ashwini Kumara is going to get it. And is
Somaras is actually not like a alcoholic beverage of this world, because Somaras is a heavenly intoxicant. Normally, because I don't have immediate scriptural reference, but at least what I've heard in some classes, normally the intoxicants of this world, they increase the tamoguna. But Somarasa, it does not increase the tamoguna, it increases the sattva more, but it is because heavenly planets by nature, they are predominantly in sattva guna. So it cannot be a normal intoxicant which will increase the tamoguna. It will be definitely increasing the sattva guna only, logically also speaking. That is, of course, some more details of the Somarasa. We have to look into some aspects of the Vedic literature, which I don't know. But it's not like a normal intoxicant of this world. And regarding why Indra is a little insecure, others are not. So one is, of course, many times in the stories in the Srimad Bhagavatam, they highlight the certain weaknesses of Indra. So from that, we should not conclude Indra is like a very worst person, some very absolutely low person. We should not come to that conclusion, because in Indra, many stories in the Bhagavatam, we find Indra becoming proud, or Indra disrespecting Brihaspati, like that. But sometimes the people use these stories to actually demean the Sanatan Dharma. So the Indra is like that. Indra, he has 1,000 eyes because he was very lusty. Sometimes people use the stories to demean them. But the point is, these personalities are definitely very great personalities. They are devotees of the Lord. They may be Karma Mishra Bhaktas. But when we see from the point of view of the amount of service they have rendered, the amount of responsibility they have taken in the universal administration. So Indra is there for 71 Divya Yugas. So in 71 Divya Yugas, in one Manvantara, you may literally count maybe the number of mistakes he has committed. You will be able to count. So compared to the amount of service, the mistakes are less from that point of view. But why those mistakes are mentioned? Because the scriptures are transparent. They don't hide anything. And while presenting the mistakes, they don't demean the person. They highlight the power of the illusory energy. So Indra, and also sometimes like when somebody is performing austerities and Indra comes to disturb. Yeah, one reason is that there may be an insecurity on the part of Indra or something. But another reason is that there is also a good motivation. An unqualified person should not forcibly come and occupy the particular position. It is also with a intention that unqualified person should not actually dethrone the duly qualified person and create chaos in the universe. So in that sense, because I heard in a class that how it was the duty of Indra also to check people who perform austerities with the wrong intention to say occupy certain post or something and create disturbance in the universe. So it was part of Indra's duty. But sometimes, sometimes a person is supposed to do certain policing, but he may become little absorbed in that policing. He may become so involved that he may become too passionate about that. So sometimes those aspects of Indra are there, but although it is also part of his duty to check certain unqualified people getting certain facilities like Somarasa, certain unqualified people coming and occupying certain post. That was also part of his duty.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Just one more question, a follow-up question regarding this point only. When the Brahmana or the sage under discussion, he said to Ashwini Kumaras in return, he'll give the soma juice after the fire yagya has been performed. So I was just wondering, in that chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Shri Krishna talks about, he has created this culture of interdependency between the devatas and the jivas. Where the jivas on the earthly planet, they perform yagya, and the result of it nourishes the devatas. So just wanted to understand when it is said, that Daksha pastime also comes, the who will get the final ahuti, how many divisions of it will happen, and then they deprive Lord Shiva from getting the result of it. So is it something it's in a material, tangible form that when you perform a fire yagya, some sacrifice, then some kind of a particular whatever ahuti including result is given to the devatas? What is it exactly? Is it in tangible form, or is just in a subtle form it is accepted?
It's in a subtle form only. It's in a subtle form. We can say something like a transferring money from here to America. Like we may not understand how the money is transferred, but in a here there is a more gross form involved. But for a common person, how can he may wonder that how can the actually money be transferred from here to America by certain means, by electronic means. But there are in a subtle manner, like the money is transferred. Similarly, in a subtle form, something is transferred from the fire yajna, whatever dravya a person is offering, and the dravya reaches that particular devata. And then, at the result of that yajna, what is created is something called as apurva. Apurva is the when the yajna is perfectly performed, each and every step is perfectly performed, then the yajna will create what is called as an apurva. Apurva is that piety generated from the yajna in a subtle form, in an unmanifest form. And that apurva will award the result to that person who performed the yajna at the appropriate time. Suppose the person is supposed to go to Swarga, but the result of that Swarga may manifest after many years. So how does that, but you performed the yajna, say suppose now, and a person will get the Swarga after say 70 years or 80 years. So then how is that connection happens? This yajna and then the result which comes after 70 years. The connection happens through apurva. This apurva is generated as a result of the performance of yajna, and that apurva stays, and that apurva at the appropriate time after 70 years, it actually generates that result in the form of swarga. That way, there are many things operate in the subtle platform. How the demigods, they get the credit, they get nourished by the performance of yajna, and apurva is generated, and the result is got at a particular time. That's how I understand.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Krishna Prabhuji. So in this,
So, yes, sir.
as you said that demigods get a benefit of the yajna performed by men in a heaven earthly planet. So in Kali Yuga, like yajna is only Sankirtan yajna. So just wanted to ask Purohit that Sankirtan yajna, then they also get benefit, or how is it? Or
Yes, Sankirtan Yagya for the Kali Yuga, by Sankirtan Yagya, the Devatas will get benefited. Definitely. In fact, Sankirtan Yagya is directly focused on Krishna, the Supreme Lord. And when Krishna is satisfied, all the Devatas are also satisfied. And the different fire Yajnas, they are particularly focused towards the different Devatas. One may be offering a particular dravya for a particular devata, although Vishnu is also worshipped in that yajna, but they may be particularly focused towards a particular devata. But the speciality of Sankirtan yajna is it is focused on Krishna, and all the devatas will get their share.
okay, and this 15th shloka, Purohit, that just curiosity that all of them were on the same standard of beauty. So wanted to check, like all three were looking same, or how is it that?
All three were exactly looking same. They were looking same.
Then how she identified they are Ashwini Kumaras, and then she asked them only?
Like she just prayed to Ashwini Kumaras. She didn't know who is Ashwini Kumaras, but she just prayed to Ashwini Kumaras in her mind. And then the Ashwini Kumaras, being pleased with her devotion, they revealed to Shukanya that this person is Chavana Rishi. She couldn't understand who is Ashwini Kumara, who is Chavana Rishi, because all three of them looked the same. But he just prayed to Ashwini Kumara sincerely in her mind, and then Ashwini Kumara is revealed.
Thank you, Purohit.
So there are a few questions in the chat box. As a preacher, how much to speak about cultural aspect which are non-existent in the current society in comparison to the transcendental aspects? How much is it essential for going back to Godhead? This is a question. So the cultural aspect is basically they are related to the Varnashram principles. So there's the Varnashram Dharma and the Bhagavad Dharma. Bhagavad Dharma is the transcendental aspect. Bhagavad Dharma is the devotional service aspect. Bhagavad Dharma is meant for one's individual salvation, for going back to Godhead. Varnashram Dharma is for creating a stability in the society, for creating a proper legacy for the future. And Varnashram Dharma is also one of the important mission of Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada mentioned the 50% is Varnashram. So when we talk about the cultural aspect, yeah, definitely it is within according to the Varnashram principles or according to the Prabhupada's mission. Prabhupada this one only. But we have to learn properly. If we are not properly conversant with the Varnashram principles, then we can create a little, if we are not learned properly, then we can create a mess out of the topic actually. So there is definitely need for speaking about the cultural aspect. There is no, we cannot transcendence, when we all the transcendence aspect means, okay, if we see about the books written by our acharyas, Krishna Chakodipad, Harinam Chintamani, Haridas Thakur, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami. Most of the books are about the transcendence aspect. They hardly wrote about Varnashram, because in establishing a Sampradaya, they presented the Sampradaya Siddhanta, the transcendence aspect. And also, when they were present, the Varnashram was very much intact. 500 years back, when Mahaprabhu was present, when the Acharyas were present, they did not, although the Mughals had, Mughal rule was there, British rule was there, but still the common culture, common society, Varnashram was very much intact. But as time progressed in the current times, there is so much of degradation. And so Varnashram is definitely required for people to generate certain stability, because we see Krishna's appearance, although the establishing dharma is the external reason for the Lord's appearance, but Krishna does not escape that responsibility of establishing dharma. He wants to reciprocate with his pure devotees, but he perfectly manages, harmonizes both the internal reason and the external reason. And the Bhagavatam 10th canto starts with how the earth approaching Brahma, the earth is overburdened with the demoniac kings, and Lord appeared to actually remove the burden of the earth. That means establishing dharma, establishing the Varnashram dharma. So when we talk about the Lord's reason for appearing in this world, or even from Prabhupada's mission, so there is definitely need to speak about Varnashram aspect. But one thing is that we have to be properly conversant with the topic, and we have to present in the appropriate language in a very logical way, in a very scientific way, and in a practical way, because the principles of Varnashram, as we see in the Shastra, they may look very ideal. Many of these, say, purports, the statements in the purports, they may look quite strong sometimes from the current time. So we have to present in a way, in a toned down way, in a logical, shastrical way, in a scientific way, in a way it appeals to the people. And we have to be properly conversant with the topic, and in such a way that how it will actually help a person, help the person, the family, the society, how it will create a stability in their life, and which will help them to pursue the transcendence. So that is the purpose of the presenting the cultural aspects. Transcendence is also full of relationships, since Vedic culture is the culture of the spiritual world. How if one does not accept them while practicing in material world, regain them in the spiritual world. See, going back to the bhakti is independent of anything. So going back to the spiritual world, or one's individual perfection in bhakti, on a Siddhantic level, it is independent of other things. We don't want to just go back to Godhead. While going back to Godhead, we create some wrong legacy in the material world because of creating certain disruption in the Varnashram level. So there has to be a proper balance of about individual perfection and also contribution to the society, or creating certain stability in the society around us. For that, Varnashram is necessary. Kushasthali is also called Dwaraka. We heard Dwaraka was constructed by Krishna. Here it is told Revata constructed it. Yeah, I think Kushasthali is the previous name of Dwaraka. Maybe it appears that previously it was known as Kushasthali, and then it became manifest, or it became destroyed. Then later Krishna again constructed Dwaraka, then it got the name Dwaraka. We can think like that. So we'll go ahead, 4th chapter. Ambarish Maharaj offended by Dhruva. Shri Shuka Uvacha. Huh.
Guruji, here also that the Sukanya just innocently she broke the eyes of Chavan Muni, and even, after that all the soldiers of King Shariati they fell constipation, and then in next verse, Guruji, it is directly mentioned that Chavan Muni, King Shariati, he understood that they have done something wrong to Chavan Muni. How he understood, Guruji, that is their mistake, and because of this offense, their result came.
So they are, in the sense, they are little. See, Shariati was a learned king. He was like a learned in the Vedas. So sometimes refined people, they can immediately guess. They can immediately like infer. Oh, this has happened because maybe we have committed some offense. We have created some disturbance, the hermitage of Chavana Rishi. So that is the they are little refined in their perception. They are sensitive and cultured and learned people. They were able to immediately guess. Shariati was able to immediately infer that.
Thank you, Guruji.
So it's the message. It is one or two. It's not one or two, but all, hence more clearer.
No, I meant that all the soldiers got affected. So it brings in more clarity.
Yeah. That's also correct. Actually. One person is having some problem. Maybe he overate or it could be some problem in his schedule. But everyone got it. That's also good reason for them to infer like. So we'll go to the fourth chapter. Nabago Nabagapatyam Yam Tatam Bratarakavim Yavishtam Yabajandayam Brahmacharinam Agatam.
Sukdev Goswami said, the son of Nabhaga, named Nabhaga, lived for a long time at the place of his spiritual master. Therefore, his brothers thought that he was not going to become a grahastha and would not return. Consequently, without providing a share for him, they divided the property of their father among themselves. When Nabhaga returned from the place of his spiritual master, they gave him their father as a share.
So we see it's a beautiful story of in this particular chapter, the initial part, the story of Nabaga, and then the later part, Ambarish Maharaj story will start. So the son of Nabaga named Nabaga. So he was living in the ashram of his spiritual master for a long time as a brahmachari. But after a long time, he returned to his home. And then his brothers, they thought that this Nabaga is not going to become a grahastha, and therefore they did not actually return whatever property they inherited from their father. They did not give the share of Nabaga to him. So they said that your share of property is that you have to take care of your father. So they gave the father as the share. So they said, we have no property to give it to you. You just take care of your father and he is your property. And Nabaga inquired that what you have given me as my share of what have you given to me as my share of our father's property? The elder brothers answered, we have kept our father as your share. But when Nabaga went to his father and said, my elder brothers have given you as my share of property, the father replied that actually your brothers are trying to cheat you. Do not believe their words. So the father said that do not believe their words. I am not a property that can be enjoyed. I am a old person. I have nothing. And then the Nabaga inquired that Nabaga's father said that at the same time, Nabaga's father did not tell Nabaga that you just go and fight with your father and somehow get your share of property. So we see Nabaga, when he was told by the brothers that we don't have any property to give it to you, just your father is the property. Nabaga just believed the words of his brother. He couldn't actually sense his brothers are trying to cheat him. Nabaga was a very simple person. He couldn't understand the cheating mentality of his brothers. Yeah, the world is such that simplicity is one of the essential quality of a Vaishnava. But the nature of the world is such that one also has to be worldly wise at certain times. One has to be diplomatic at certain times. Prabhupada says in a purport that even in a family life, many times a person has to be diplomatic. If a person is not diplomatic, then he cannot lead a peaceful life. And when he is dealing with different people in this world, one cannot avoid diplomacy. But essentially, diplomacy is one of the weeds. Kutinati, Nishiddhachara, Jiva Himsana. Kutinati is one of the weeds of bhakti, which is not favorable for bhakti. But sometimes while dealing with certain kinds of people, one has to be diplomatic. We should, within the devotees, one should not be diplomatic. When there's the diplomacy within the family of devotees, within the community of devotees, that will create a distrust among the community of devotees. And if at all, if we have to use diplomacy within the community of devotees, it should be for the purpose of bringing some devotee close to the Lord. It should not be for some ulterior motive. Just like Ramananda Rai would be actually trying to convince to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to give his audience to Prataparudra Maharaj. So Ramananda Rai was expert in diplomacy because he was previously a minister. Therefore he was also trying to convince, he was trying to pacify Mahaprabhu to give his audience to Prataparudra Maharaj. So Prabhupada says that here Ramananda Rai used his diplomacy in the service of the Lord to bring another devotee close to Mahaprabhu, to bring close to the Lord. So Nabaga, because of his simplicity, he couldn't see the cheating mentality of the brothers. But so Chanakya also says in a particular place that how Natyantam saralena bhavyam gatyapasya vanastalim chidyante saralastatra kubjatishtanti padapa. A man should be simple-hearted, straight-mannered, but one should not be simpleton. Otherwise, a person will be exploited and his generosity will be taken for granted. Therefore, one should never be too simple. If a person goes to the jungle, one will see that those trees which have grown up straight, those straightly grown up trees, they have been cut. But those trees which grow up in a haphazard manner, they have been spared. So therefore, in the material world, a person also has to be sometimes has to learn diplomacy. And so Prabhupada explains in one purport, diplomacy of Ramananda Rai and Sarvam Bhattacharya and all the great devotees succeeded. The conclusion is that diplomacy used for the service of the Lord is a form of devotional service. So, but Nabaga's father, when he heard this, Nabaga told that, okay, your brothers are trying to cheat. But Nabaga's father did not tell Nabaga that, okay, you file a case or you fight with your brothers. Nabaga's father told that, now at present, all the descendants of Angira Rishi are going to perform a great sacrifice. And although they are very intelligent, and every sixth day, they will be bewildered in performing a sacrifice. They'll be bewildered in performing a sacrifice. So therefore, at that time, you go and help those descendants of Angira Rishi with the right mantra so that they can continue to perform the sacrifice. So in the Vedic fire sacrifice, as I mentioned, that every aspect of the fire sacrifice is so important. Even if one aspect is missed out, you will not get the final apurva, which will not generate the appropriate result. So Nabaga's father did not want Nabaga to fight with his brothers. Nabaga's father gave him an alternative means to earn money. Because the mood of the Brahmana is sacrifice and detachment. And the Kshatriyas, they are supposed to fight against adharma. But because Nabaga was a Brahminical and his father was also Brahmana, he said, okay, just forget about your brothers, don't fight with them. So I will tell you alternate means by which you can earn wealth. So what is the need of Nabaga to earn wealth? Because he is going to enter the Grahastha ashram. Therefore, definitely there is need of wealth for his future life actually. To practice spiritual life peacefully, in the sense in the Artha Shastra it is said that Artha is the Moola of Dharma. So a basic stability is required for practicing spirituality. So if that same wealth has to be earned with so much of anxiety, then so therefore Nabaga's father told that you go to this particular sacrifice, help these priests, then they will be, when they are satisfied with your help, and they will give the certain wealth to you, and that will be helpful for your future life. And the universe is designed in such a way, many times one person's shortcoming, one person's mistake is advantage for another person. So here the descendants of Angira Rishi, they were not aware of something, and that became advantageous for Nabaga. COVID time, there are miseries for many people. For other people, it was like a boom time for them. They earned a lot of money, and many companies also, they could actually increase their profitability by reducing the cost. So many times one person's disadvantages, advantages for another person. So descendants of Angira Rishi, they were all very intelligent people, but still they had a shortcoming, they had a flaw. Nabaga was a simple person, but he had a good guide in the form of his father, and his father advised him to help the descendants of Angira Rishi. So then Nabaga's father told that you go to the souls and recite 2 Vedic hymns pertaining to the Vaishwadeva. And when the great sages have completed the sacrifice and they are going to Swarga, they will give you the remnants of the Dakshina which they have received from the sacrifice. Therefore, go there immediately. So Nabaga did as his father advised. And the great sages of the Angira dynasty, being satisfied with Nabaga's help, they gave all their wealth and then they went to Swarga. So when a person is leaving the earth, when a person is going to heaven or other planet, or when a person is going to take up another body, one has to give up all the possessions. So all these people, they were going to Swarga and they were giving up their possessions of this world. But for So for those the descendants of Angida Rishi, the wealth of this world is useless. But for Nabhaga, the wealth of this world was the most important thing because he is going to begin his Grihastha life. We can see how the happiness is relative. For somebody which is insignificant, which is useless, that becomes very useful for somebody else. And so while Nabhaga was accepting those riches, at that time, a black-looking person from the northern direction came to Nabhaga and said, all the wealth from this sacrificial arena belongs to me. So therefore, hand over this wealth to me. And this dark-looking person was none other than Lord Shiva. And so here we see that Nabhaga, he came after a long time from the ashram, but his brothers cheated. And then on the advice of his father, he went to help these Brahmanas, and then they gave the wealth. And when he just got the wealth, Lord Shiva came and said that all this wealth belongs to me. So in the material world, there is always some opposition. There is some competition. When we think that we have eliminated all the problems of life, but at that time there will be some problem will pop up. So that is how it happens. Seventh verse. Mamedam rishi birdattam iditarhisma manavaha syannau te pitari prashna prishtavan pitaram yata.
Nabhaga then said, these riches belong to me. The great saintly persons have delivered them to me. When Nabhaga said this, the black-looking person replied, let us go to your father and ask him to settle our disagreement. In accordance with this, Nabhaga inquired from his father.
So the stranger said, that, when Nabhaga said that this wealth belongs to me, the sages have given it to me, but Lord Shiva protested. Maybe he couldn't understand also if this person is Lord Shiva, because Lord Shiva was coming to test Nabhaga. So that Lord Shiva told that, okay, let us go to your father and let us take your father's judgment. Whom does the wealth belong to? And then, so we see when many times when there is a conflict, you approach a third person who is trustable. But the third person should be trusted by both the personalities. The intermediate person, the mediating person, he should be detached and he should be intelligent so that he can give the right justice. There's a story of Prahlad's son Virochan. So Virochan and another person, Sudanva, both wanted to get married to the same girl. So Sudanva was the son of a Brahmana and Virochan was the son of Prahlad. So they had a conflict because both wanted to get married to the same girl. And they decided to consult Prahlad. Even though Prahlad was the father of Virochan. And Prahlad, after seeing that quarrel, he said that Sudanva should get married to this girl. And by seeing the fairness of Prahlad, Sudanva did not kill Virochana because there, according to some precondition or something like Sudanva would harm Virochan if the judgment was in his favor. But Sudanva did not kill Virochan, but instead asked him to wash his feet in the presence of that girl. So in the Vedic culture, we find like Prahlad was actually trying to resolve a conflict between his son and another person. But generally we find that when your own family member is involved in a conflict, then people tend to favor that particular family member. But there are many examples that how those who are loyal to Dharma, their loyalty to Dharma that takes a higher status, that becomes a more important principle than the affection towards the family members. That was exhibited by Prahlad Maharaj. And also in the debate between Mandan Mishra and Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya was going to debate with Mandan Mishra. And then Mandan Mishra asked who will be the referee. Shankaracharya said that let your wife be the referee. And what was the condition in the debate? Shankaracharya said that if I get defeated in the debate, I will become your disciple. And if you get defeated, you must take sannyas and become my disciple. And for the debate, Shankaracharya told, let your wife be the judge. So just imagine that the husband is participating in the debate, and the husband will lose the debate. The husband will have to take sannyas. Then naturally the wife, one may think the wife will give the judgment in favor of the husband. But Shankaracharya had faith in the character of Mandan Mishra's wife, that she is more loyal to Dharma than to the relationship. So loyalty to Dharma becomes a higher principle than the loyalty to a person or an institution or any relationship. And sure enough, the story further goes, it goes in a different direction. And Mandan Mishra's wife did not actually compromise her loyalty to Dharma. Mandan Mishra got defeated, and then further debate happened. So the point is that here also, Lord Shiva had faith in the neutrality or the Dharma Nishtha of Nabaga, the father of Nabaga. Otherwise, why would he actually make Nabaga's father as a judge? So the training in the Vedic culture, the training in education, the Vedic education, the training becomes complete when a person becomes Dharma Nishtha, when a person becomes loyal to Dharma, loyal to the principles, loyal to the Shastra. When a person becomes when a person does not compromise the principles of the Shastra. So at that time, the training becomes complete. So they had that faith. And then when Nabaga's father, what did Nabaga's father said? And then Nabaga's father said, the remnants of whatever the great sages sacrificed in the arena of the Daksha Yajna, they belong to Lord Shiva. They are the share of Shiva. And so therefore, actually everything belongs to Lord Shiva. So here, Nabaga, the father of Nabaga, he said that all this belongs to Lord Shiva only. So here we see, he did not give a judgment just because my son is involved, so I should give a judgment in favor of my son. So the great soul, fairness, that means fairness means basically Dharma Nishtha. And that is the quality of a guru. Tadvijnanartham sa gurum yeva abhigachet samitpani shrotriyam brahmanishtam. So the quality of a guru is that shrotriyam brahmanishtam. Shrotriyam means a guru should be highly learned in the Shastra. And brahmanishtam means his nishtha or loyalty towards should be towards the truth. Brahmanishta, his loyalty should be towards the truth or the supreme Brahman. Or we can say his loyalty should be towards the Dharma. His loyalty should be towards the Shastra. So all other loyalty becomes subordinate to Brahmanishta. Any loyalty to the person or an institution or somebody, some authority, that loyalty holds good to the extent it is in line with the Brahmanishta. So here, that is why there's also a verse in the 4th canto about the qualities of Prithu Maharaj. It is said that this king, Prithu Maharaj, if he finds that the son of his enemy is found to be following the principles of dharma, he would reward the son of his enemy. And if he finds that his own son is actually indulging in adharma, he would give punishment to his son. And that is what it means to be dharma nishta, or being loyal to the principles. So here, Nabhaga's father, like, he could have been attached to his son and favored him, but he favored the truthfulness. He favored the right principle. And if not for his son, he could have favored his own ego. Because after all, it was his idea. He only told Nabhaga that you go to actually this sacrifice and help this descendants of Angila Rishi. They would give the wealth. It was his idea. But still, he did not favor his own ego. So therefore, he gave a very fair decision that he said that, okay, all this wealth belongs to Lord Shiva. So then at that time, Nabhaga accepted the verdict of his father without any grudge. And he offered obeisances to his father, and he offered obeisances to Lord Shiva. Everything in the arena of sacrifice is yours. And this is the assertion of my father. Therefore, I accept this verdict. I bow down to you, and then I want to please you. Like that, he accepted it without any protest. So we can see like such a great character on the part of Nabhaga. Like he was cheated by his brother, and then when he got the wealth, like Lord Shiva took an opposition, and then he thought that at least his father would actually favor. But when father gave a decision, even at that time, Nabhaga did not protest. He just humbly accepted that. Yes, so that is why we see from this Nabhaga came Ambarish Maharaj. We say good fruits come from good trees. So this is the character of Nabhaga. So Nabhaga had that faith in his father, and he was detached, and that was the result of his training. That was the result of his training. And we may think that Nabhaga was a failure as a brahmachari, because he couldn't say continue in the brahmachari ashram, he came out or something like that. But actually his training was successful, because after completing the training, how he actually faced these situations, like how he took this verdict of his brothers, is how he took the verdict of his father. So we can see detachment from personal motives, detachment from success, detachment from wealth in the character of Nabhaga. And Nabhaga was consulting the higher powers. He consulted his father when he was cheated by his brothers. And then again, when Lord Shiva protested, he again consulted his father. And even after losing, he took shelter of the same person. Like he lost all the wealth to Lord Shiva, but he offered obeisances to Lord Shiva. So we can see his humility of Nabhaga. And all this wealth belongs to you. That is my father's verdict. So Nabhaga's such a beautiful character, detachment from personal motives, following the superior authorities, seeking the shelter of the higher powers, humility. So, and then when Nabhaga showed this character, 10th verse, Yatte pitavadaddharma tvam cha satyam prabhashase dadamite mantradrisho jnanam brahma sanatanam.
Lord Shiva said, whatever your father has said is the truth, and you also are speaking the same truth. Therefore, I, who know the Vedic mantras, shall explain transcendental knowledge to you.
So Lord Shiva said that, yeah, whatever your father said is the truth, and you are also accepting that same truth, I will actually give transcendental knowledge to you. So here we see Nabaga sacrificed the relative wealths of this world, relative truths of this world in the form of that wealth. But what he gained ultimately is the absolute truth. He got the transcendental knowledge. So Lord Shiva was pleased with Nabaga. He said that I shall explain transcendental knowledge to you. Jnanam Brahma Sanatanam. So when we are attached to the relative truths of this world, we lose the absolute truth. So like Dashrath Maharaj was attached to the relative truths of this world, and for that sake, he sent the absolute truth to the forest. On the other hand, Vasudev, in order to protect the absolute truth, he made a compromise with his with the relative truth. He broke his promise given to Kamsa. So because both Nabaga and his son Nabaga both were detached from the relative truths of this world, Lord Shiva was happy with them and offered them transcendental knowledge. And if we say even the Bhagavad Gita, the qualifications for Arjuna to receive Bhagavad Gita, the second chapter, Baldev Vidyabhushan quotes certain verses from the Upanishads. Arjuna exhibited certain qualities. Arjuna exhibited the qualities of mind control, sense control, indifference to this world, and faith in the Guru. Because he exhibited those qualities, then Krishna spoke the Gita. And so Lord Shiva said that Grihana Dravinam Dattam Matsatra Parisheshitam Yit Yuktvan Antarhito Rudro Bhagavan Dharma Vatsalha. Now you may take all the wealth remaining from my sacrifice, for I give it to you. Lord Shiva, like we find that sometimes we may think that following a life of truthfulness or following the Vedic scriptures, sometimes we may think that it may not be materially profitable. It may not be materially profitable, that we may not get any wealth. But Nabaga, ultimately, he got not only the transcendental knowledge, but he also got material opulence. Shiva, at the end, he said that you also take this actually wealth. You may take all the wealth remaining from my sacrifice. So Nabaga earned even the material wealth at the end. But he had to go through that intermediate period where he had to show his character. And then Shukdev Goswami gives a beautiful Falastuti. Ya yetet samsmaret pratah sayam cha susamakitah kavir bhavati mantragyo gatim chaiva tatatmanah. If one remembers this narration in the morning and evening with great attention, he becomes learned, knowledgeable of the mantras, and attains his goals. So these Falastutis are so profound. And then Shukdev Goswami said that from this Nabaga, a Mahabhagavata called Ambarish Maharaj took birth. And Naspurushat Brahma Shapopi Yamna Pratihata Kvachit. The curse of a Brahmana could not touch or injure Ambarish Maharaj at all. So this is mentioned by Shukdev Goswami, and at this point, Parishit Maharaj is asking a question. So we see the good samskaras of Nabaga, they got carried over to Ambarish Maharaj, and Ambarish Maharaj acquired all the great qualities, and especially that of detachment from the wealth and attachment to the spiritual wealth. So let us read this particular question of Parishit Maharaj and then end the class. Shri Raja Uvacha Bhagavan Shrotumichami Rajarshes-tasya Dhimatah Na Prabhudyatra Nirmukto Brahmadando Duratyayah.
King Parishit inquired, O great personality, Maharaj Amrish was certainly most exalted and meritorious in character. I wish to hear about him. How surprising it is that the curse of a Brahmana, which is insurmountable, could not act upon him.
So Brahma Shapa is a very heavy shapa. It is actually insurmountable. And currently we may not have experienced a Brahma Shapa because there are not such qualified Brahmanas present. But Brahma Shapa is a, like we sing in the Tulsi Arti. Even the sin of killing a Brahmana will be vanquished by worshipping Tulsi, by doing protection of Tulsi. So immediately Parishit Maharaj is asking that how surprising is it that the curse of a Brahmana could not act upon Ambarish Maharaj. So we'll continue tomorrow. Anybody has any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Project. So in this, we see this how Navaga is acting so submissively, and as you also said that sometimes we are not able to digest these principles which are mentioned in Shastras because we are not finding here in current yoga, current time. So like somebody who follows like this standards, then he may not gain anything in this material world. So, Miss, just if you can focus some point on this, how he is acting so submissively and giving all the wealth and ready for everything, and now later he got transcendental knowledge. In our case, how we can understand this?
How he was able to act like that, you are asking?
No, he acted and then lastly he got success. Means like all failures starting, but he was still going on, and then finally he got the success or transcendental knowledge.
What is the? I didn't get the exact question actually.
He got the transcendental knowledge as well. So although it appeared that he was lost, he had lost everything materially, but he followed these qualities of following the authority and detachment. So in current scenario, how to understand this? How much we can follow?
So in the see, we don't. That's why there's sometimes one may have to seek justice, and sometimes we have to accept the verdict. We have to focus on transcendence, and sometimes the other party may be wrong. But if it is only affecting us personally, but it's not affecting the society, then we may not unnecessarily fight with the, say, other devotees or other authorities. We may just try to choose, okay, let me choose my area of service and let me go on with my service. We don't want to unnecessarily fight and create arguments within the, say, family of devotees. But sometimes if it is connected with, say, larger society, then one may have to work hard to get justice. But otherwise, one should find, say, alternate means of service, alternate areas where one can contribute, and then one should go ahead. So we can see this principle of Nabaga not protesting. Because sometimes there is a need for, as I mentioned, sometimes there is need for justice, but we have to intelligently see when to do that. Some certain instances, just forget it. Okay, let us find our area of service. Let us change our area of service, or let us choose a different place. and then continue your service to the Lord instead of creating certain problems in other places, or report to the, suppose somebody, some injustice is done, then report to the right person, present in the right way. But even after that, something is not done, then you just go ahead in your life, find your place.
Okay, bro. Thank you. Harish.
Hare
What
Krishna,
is
Prabhu.
this? Huh.
Dandavata. Prabhuji, this is regarding yesterday's discussion regarding this. I'm just trying to understand in right perspective this concept of pujaris who are offered some kind of salary, and having understood that okay, Kali Yuga, there is unreal situation, unideal situations are there, and there are circumstances and situations. But philosophically, and trying to understand in the right perspective, we see that if there is someone who is working and he is giving fruits of his result to the Lord, you know, and maybe he's taking out some time, maybe he's working in company, but he's taking out time to come to serve the Lord, as well as he's offering the fruits of his work to the Lord in terms of some financial donation, etc. Whereas if we see this personality who is serving in temple, his fruits of work, it's his salary that he is taking for the devotional service which is rendering of worshipping the deity. So for me, it is, I am not able to properly understand this concept that how is it becoming better than the first one. I'm thinking that the first one is better. Like we say, na karma yoga means what? You act according to dharma and offer the fruits to Krishna. But here, what is being offered to Krishna? Because we are trying to do some service, but we are trying to take something from it. So can you please clarify? Because I am asking this because there is even Prabhupada times this concept was not there actually. Prabhupada kind of strongly saying that this should not be the case. So can you please throw some light?
We may not actually go too much into analyzing. Sometimes it is difficult to analyze. So this person's devotion is superior, this person's devotion is inferior. They may be very sincere. Many times the pujaris are paid. Like anybody who is working in the temple, whether a pujari or different staffs in a spiritual organization, they are paid. They are not paid so much because we are not big companies or this thing. So from one point of view, we can see that they have chosen to serve in the temple for a lesser salary instead of actually choosing to work outside where they may get more salary. Instead of seeing that, okay, they are just even for the service rendered the temple, they are taking something in return. You can also see in another way that they have compromised to earn more by serving, by earning outside. Instead of that, they are choosing to serve in the temple. We can see in that light. At the same time, it is not that it does not mean that we have to see others who are working outside in an inferior way. For these people, out of greed, they are working outside and they are earning more money. So it's not for that purpose. But everything we can see in different ways. And they have their dependent family, they have their family, they have to maintain their children as the. It may not be seen, okay, they are just when they have kept the, say, Krishna in the center of their life, and they have to maintain the other devotees, they need the maintenance for them, and they are taking that. And apart from that, they are also chanting, they are performing other services for which they are not taking anything in return. So it may not be seen minutely. Sometimes minute analysis of different devotee situation, or this person is working outside or working inside is giving this much more, and we can make some wrong judgments on external level, whereas that person may be more advanced or this thing. So we may not do that. But I highlighted that principle in regards to Vasishtha Rishi. The reason why his mind became contaminated, he got a wrong judgment, why he over punished was that he was little greedy for the money. Therefore, he was performing different yajna, acting as a priest and getting dakshina. And therefore, he didn't have the right sense of discrimination. And this principle has to be kept in mind by everyone. And one has to practice that. But we cannot categorically say that, oh, this person is. Definitely the concept of paid pujari, it is as I mentioned, there is a verse in Garuda Puran. It is there, but sometimes the current times, there are different things are there. We should try to, we have to see how we can better practice those principles, and different people involved, they have to come together and discuss what are the practical ways and how we can improve the better practice of the principles in the Shastra.
Okay, thank you.
Hare Krishna, we'll have the next, this Friday also we are having the class. So this is a information for all the devotees, because next Tuesday is a Radhashtami and next Friday is again Ekadasi. So we are shifting the next week one class to this week on this Friday, this week Friday, we are having the Bhaktivedanta class. Same timing, 11 to 1:30. So class time has been over now. We're waiting for Prabhuji if he comes. Yes, Prabhuji has come.
Suddenly, the laptop got discharged. So, should we continue the questions or shall I just wind up? A few questions. There were a few questions in the chat box. Now it is because I logged out and came, I am not able to see the questions.
Tomorrow we can answer, because now,
Okay.
yeah, 1:40.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Tomorrow we'll continue.
Yes, Prabhuji will put this question for tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yes, thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Very good. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्री प्रभुपाद की जय।